Hey guys, tonight we start with something unexpectedly sweet, the golden shimmer of honey in a marble empire. You're standing in the heart of Constantinople, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not the sour reek of fish from the harbors or the sharp tang of spices from distant lands. It's warm, syrupy honey dripping from earthenware jars. Everywhere you turn, you see merchants leaning on tables stacked with amber pools glistening in sunlight that sneaks through, silk canopies. Bees, alive and buzzing, are rare here. They're tucked away in secret gardens or monastic courtyards, but their essence dominates these markets like a quiet monarch. You edge closer to a stall. The merchant's beard is flecked with crumbs, probably from dipping his bread into the same honey he's selling. He waves a ladle, and sticky strings stretch and glint in the light. This isn't your supermarket squeeze bottle honey. This is Byzantine honey, dark, aromatic, thick like liquid amber, harvested from hives scattered across Anatolia and Thrace. Historians still argue whether certain regions, like Bithynia, truly produced the finest honey, or if that was just a marketing gimmick worthy of Instagram centuries before filters existed. Either way, one taste, and you'd forget sugar ever existed, because in this world, honey is sugar. You take a slow walk through the arcades. Behind those marble colonnades, the whispers of an empire mingle with the hum of bees far away in orchards. Honey here isn't just for toast, by the way. Hasn't even been invented yet. It's currency, medicine, sacred offering, and of course, a dessert for emperors with appetites as towering as their egos. Imagine Justinian, spoon in hand, plodding over a bowl of honeyed almonds while planning to build the Hagia Sophia. Feels oddly relatable, doesn't it? You, too, make big plans after snacks, but before you get too cozy picturing the grandeur. Remember, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this market without either getting fleeced by a sly merchant or collapsing from the sheer chaos. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. So maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You follow a trail of honey drips leading deeper into the marketplace. A boy runs past with a small clay pot, and you notice his tunic is crusted with sugar like a donut gone rogue. The Byzantines didn't have refined sugarcane. Sugar was a rare luxury, but honey filled that gap and then some, rich homes boasted. Jars sealed with wax, and even ordinary kitchens had their small stash, 'cause nothing quite screams status like something sweet. Some scholars suggest bees in the Byzantine world were more than farm animals. They were symbols, tiny winged metaphors of order and piety. Others argue this interpretation is just romantic hindsight. But as you pass a mosaic glimmering in gold and sapphire, where bees swarm around stylized flowers, you can't help but wonder if those little insects meant more than just desert. This isn't a Disney beekeeping montage. Beekeeping here was practical, spiritual, and bureaucratic. Of course it was bureaucratic. This is Byzantium, where they taxed everything from salt to silk to, yes, honey. What if you think modern red tape is bad? Try applying for a hive license in the 10th century. Good luck finding the right office without Google Maps. You pause by a street musician plucking a lyre. His hat is tipped open for coins, but in his song, there's a verse about bees, about their wisdom and loyalty. He might just be romanticizing bugs to earn an extra copper, but it works. A woman tosses a coin, smiling as though the thought of bees humming in fields soothes her worries, and maybe it soothes yours too. As the city roars in the distance, horses clattering, merchants shouting, there's something comforting about knowing that somewhere beyond these walls, in sun-drenched orchards, bees drift lazily among blossoms, indifferent to politics and palaces. Their simple labor creates sweetness that binds this complicated empire together. You take one last look at the honey jars before moving on, your fingers sticky, your mind buzzing like the bees themselves. Ahead, a narrow alley promises more secrets, perhaps. Even the hidden hives that keep Constantinople's sweet tooth satisfied. You slip away from the crowded marketplace and follow that winding alley where sunlight slants through cracks in the rooftops like liquid gold fitting for a night about honey, isn't it? Da-da-da-da-da. The street narrows until it feels like you're walking. Through the empire's rib cage, bones of stone and plaster pressing close. It's cooler here, the hum of the bazaar fading behind you. Ahead, a small wooden gate creaks open. You catch a glimpse of something almost secret. A courtyard garden. The scent hits first sharp rosemary, bitter myrtle, sweet apple blossoms in, then you hear it. A low, lazy drone. Bees. Not the Disney kind with big eyes and sassy personalities, but real Byzantine bees, moving with methodical grace. They rise and fall like flecks of sunlight, slipping in and out of terracotta tubes stacked along the courtyard wall. These are the hive's humble cylinders, capped with mud and straw, lined in wax. Historians still argue whether this design was native ingenuity or borrowed from older Greek and Roman models. But either way, it works like magic without needing a patent lawyer. You step inside as though you belong here. A monk in a coarse wool tunic barely glances at you. His hands are busy, steady as he pries open a hive lid with a tool that looks like something between a spatula and a relic of St. Lawrence's grill. He hums under his breath at him, probably, and if you strain your ears, you can almost catch the words, something about diligence, purity, and the sweetness of heaven. Subtle, right? Because for Byzantines, bees weren't just bugs, they were tiny sermons in motion. They worked in order, without sin, never unionizing, never demanding hazard pay, which made them the poster children of monastic life. The monk lifts a honeycomb dripping gold like molten glass, and the smell is dizzying wildflowers, sun, earth. He tips it into a clay basin, and the honey oozes out in slow ribbons. You notice a thin gauze stretched over another jar, catching bee legs and bits of wax. Primitive but clever filtration. If you were waiting for medieval drama, sorry, this is more like the world's stickiest spa day. And yet, don't get too cozy. Beekeeping wasn't a peaceful hobby, it was survival. Honey wasn't just a sweetener. It was medicine, antiseptic, energy booster, basically their Gatorade and Neosporin rolled into one. Byzantine medical manuals rave about honey for wounds, sore throats, and even hair treatments. Picture a bald bureaucrat slathering his head in honey, praying for regrowth. You laugh, but hey, modern influencers, aren't that different with their avocado masks and snail serums? Some scholars suggest. Monastic honey was a secret currency, a golden revenue stream, funding manuscripts and mosaics. Others claim that's overblown, but then again, monks weren't exactly live streaming their budgets, so who knows? What we do know, emperors craved this honey. Dripped into palace kitchens, mixed with spices so exotic you'd need a travel visa just to smell them. Cinnamon, cardamom, pepper, each spoonful was like a tiny silk road in your mouth. You wander deeper into the garden, rushing past fig trees whose leaves rustle like gossip. Bees dart past your ears, tiny golden comets, with no regard for personal space. And for a moment, you imagine the chaos if one of these hives toppled. 1,000 angry workers swarming like an unpaid army. And trust me, Byzantine first aid wasn't exactly equipped for allergic shock. No EpiPens, just prayers and maybe some vinegar. In a corner, there's a clay water trough where bees hover like miniature helicopters sipping droplets. It's strangely soothing to watch, like an early Byzantine version of a cat video, minus the whiskers. You lean on a low wall warmed by sun, and it hits you, this whole empire, and with its politics and palaces and theological fistfights, depends on these quiet courtyards. Without bees, no honey. Without honey, no preserved fruit, no energy for fasting monks, no sweet bribes for corrupt officials. The empire runs on gold, yes, but also on this humble liquid amber. The monk notices you staring and offers a crumb of bread dipped in honey. You take it, and wow, it's dense, nutty, soaked in sweetness so rich, it's almost spicy. For a second, the centuries collapse, and you're just a tired human tasting something timeless. Then the monk turns away, already reaching for another hive. Because bees don't wait for anyone, not emperors, not monks, and certainly not night owls like you. You wipe your fingers on your tunic, a terrible idea. It now feels like flypaper, and head for the gate. Outside, The alley stretches like a quiet throat, leading back to the roar of the city. But before you return to chaos, you glance back one. Last time at that courtyard humming like a prayer in motion. It's not grand like Hagia Sophia, but in its own sticky, buzzing way. It's just as holy. Ahead, the alley curves toward the water. You hear gulls crying over the Bosphorus, smell salt cutting through honey's lingering perfume. Somewhere out there, barges slide heavy with amphorae and, you bet a few are brimming with honey, bound for palaces or distant provinces. Trade, taxes, temptation, all tied to the labor of wings no bigger than your fingernail. You keep walking, the hum fading behind you, replaced by the slap of waves and the scent of brine. And as the sea opens before you, glittering under the same sun that kissed those hives, you realize this empire isn't powered by steel or swords, it's powered by sweetness, by hands patient enough to coax it from bees. The alley spills you out onto a terrace that overlooks the Bosphorus's sheet of rippling sapphire speckled with white sails. The water smells faintly metallic like wet coins mingled with tar and fish guts from nearby docks. You lean against a stone balustrade, warm beneath your palms, and feel the city's pulse stretch out across 2 continents. Constantinople doesn't just hum, it vibrates. Every ripple of water, every shout from a dockhand hauling crates is a bass note in its endless song. Tonight, that song is about Bezor, rather. The honey they produce and the rivers of commerce it feeds. You follow a stone stair that snakes down toward the harbor, your sandals slapping softly. The closer you get, the louder it grows, the slap of ropes against masts, the bark of merchants haggling over spice sacks, the occasional clink of amphorae filled with oil or honey if you know the right guy. And let's be honest, Byzantines always knew the right guy. You smell everything at once, resin from pine crates, brine-soaked rope, something faintly rancid you try not to identify on beneath it all, a sweetness so subtle you almost doubt it's real. But there it is, honey. A fat-bellied merchant ship groans at the quay, its hull streaked in pitch, its deck littered with amphorae, sealed in wax. One jar cracks under the weight of another, and suddenly you see it. Golden liquid pooling like sunlight spilled across the planks. Sailors curse, scrambling to scoop it up with spoons and broken shards, because wasting honey is like wasting gold. You crouch closer, and the smell swirls up warm, floral, alive. Somewhere behind you, gulls screech like drunken aristocrats arguing over theology. Here's the thing about honey. It's not just sugar in a jar. It's in the Byzantine world, it's liquid strategy. Cane sugar won't really hit Europe until the Crusaders bring it back from the Middle East centuries later. So for now, honey rules the desert kingdom, and the empire knows it. Imperial scribes kept ledgers noting honey as a tax item. Some monasteries owed honey to the crown, and failing to deliver wasn't just a clerical oops, it could ruin your year. Historians still argue whether these taxes were fair or a sweet little extortion racket, but one thing's clear. If the emperor wanted honey, you'd better cough it up poor face of fate stickier than the product itself. And honey doesn't just stay local. Oh no, it travels down the Bosphorus, out to the Black Sea. Through the Aegean like some golden VIP, amphorae of honey show up in records from Crimea to Crete, proof that bees had better PR than most saints. Some say honey funded pilgrimages, wars, even the occasional bribe to a customs official. Imagine being that guy. Yes, Senator, your holiness can pass, but only if you share a taste. Suddenly that amphora seems lighter, doesn't it? You pause to watch a clerk with ink-stained fingers tallying jars, his tablet dotted with Greek numerals. He scratches behind his ear with the stylus, smearing ink like a toddler with finger paint. Nearby, a tax collector argues with a monk who's clearly had it with bureaucracy. The monk's voice is tight as a harp string, and you catch words like canonicon monastic dues and eleemus in alms, all delivered in tones sweeter than the honey he's refusing to surrender. You almost clap because this is peak Byzantine. Energy, theology, and tax law colliding in the world's pettiest gladiator match. You drift toward a smaller vessel moored at the edge, where a man in a wool cap pries open a jar. Inside, comb floating like amber lace, he offers you a taste on the tip of a reed. It's lighter than the monk's honey earlier, almost lemony, with a whisper of wild thyme. He grins through a missing tooth and explains in Greek thick as honey that this batch came from Mount Athos. Sacred honey, basically. Pilgrims pay extra for that, convinced it carries blessings along with calories. Fringe tidbit. Some believed honey harvested near relics could cure melancholy, gout, even demonic whispers. You imagine a medieval Yelp review. 5 stars drove. Out my inner demon would buy again. As you savor, the harbor groans with life. A barge creaks as it takes on weight timber, wool, amphorae. You spot a sailor tattooed with crude bee shapes on his forearms. A good luck charm? Or maybe just an early fanboy move. Another worker wipes his brow with a rag that smears honey across his face like an accidental beauty mask. Somewhere, an imperial official sharpens his stylus and thinks, all of this gets logged. You stroll past stacks of cargo, and for a second, the smell of honey fuses with tar and salt until you can't tell where sweetness ends and sweat begins. The sun dips lower, gilding the Bosphorus so it looks like molten honey itself. Cosmic joke. Maybe, or a reminder that this empire's arteries run with sugar more than steel. You climb a gangplank just to feel the deck sway beneath your feet. And the city spreads behind you. Domes glowing rose, seagulls slicing the sky like tiny silver scythes. This is where sweetness becomes power on these planks, in these jars. In ledgers inked by men who never tasted a drop, you linger, fingers sticky from that last sample. Think how every empire is basically a beehive, buzzing, building, hoarding. Sweetness, while pretending it's all for some higher purpose. The workers do the slog. The elite sip the honeyed wine. Sound familiar? Don't worry, you're safe from political rants tonight. For now, you just let the hum of trade and the sigh of waves lull you into a rhythm. And when the amphora thunks shut behind you, sealing its golden cargo, you could almost hear the whisper of bees inside of it, though they're miles away. Still working, still buzzing, unaware they're fueling an empire's dream. The ship rocks. Gently and for a breath you wonder, if honey ever runs out, what happens then? Do empires collapse over dessert? Historians still argue whether scarcity toppled thrones or, if people just learned to settle for figs. You don't have the answer. You just know the jar you licked clean tasted like forever. The city closes in again as you leave the docks and wind into a maze of alleys so narrow, even the cats walk single file. Their eyes glint in torchlight like molten coins, slipping between stacked amphorae and bundles of herbs hanging low enough to brush your hair. The air thickens, here warm, spiced, clinging to your skin like a too persistent admirer. You catch cinnamon, clove, something musky and medicinal. Then suddenly there it is, again that mellow floral note. Honey, always honey, humming in the background like an old Byzantine hymn you can't quite forget. You push through a bead, curtain into what looks like a shop but feels more like a confessional. Shelves rise like theological arguments, lined with jars of golden liquid in every imaginable shade. Straw, amber, mahogany, so dark it swallows the lamplight. A man in a tunic so patched it could qualify as a mosaic looks up from his work. His beard is a gray bramble, his fingers sticky and quick. Without a word, he gestures toward a low stool. You sit. The wood creaks like it's been judging strangers for centuries. He slides a jar toward you, honey, so pale it's almost translucent like frozen sunlight. From Hymettus, he says in Greek, as smooth as warm wax. You've heard the name? Mount Hymettus in Attica, famed since antiquity for thyme honey, so fragrant poets wrote odes about it. You dip a finger in, taste, and the world tilts. Sharp herbs at first, then sweetness that blooms slow, lingering like gossip in a cloister. No wonder ancient Athenians practically wrote sonnets to this stuff. The Byzantines, they turned it into an export powerhouse, trading it for silk, grain, even soldiers' wages when coin ran short. You glance around and notice something stranger. Rows of candles. It's fat and pale as winter squash, lined up like obedient monks. Beeswax. Of course. The church eats candles the way teenagers eat snacks fast, and without apology. Hagia Sophia alone could devour tons of wax yearly, every flicker a silent testimony to the empire's hunger for light. And bees make both, honey for the tongue, wax for the soul, practical theology, right? You smile at the thought, but here's the kicker. Historians still argue whether some monasteries kept bees more for wax than honey. Makes sense when your abbot dreams in candlelight and incense smoke? The old beekeeper, because that's what he is. Clear leans closer, lowering his voice like he's about to reveal a state secret. For wounds, he says, tapping another. Jar this one, darker, viscous, almost medicinal. He's right. Honey wasn't just dessert. It was Byzantine neosporin, applied to cuts, burns, even eye infections, thanks to its natural antibacterial properties. Doctors in Constantinople's hospitals swore by it. And those hospitals, some of the most advanced in the medieval world, complete with female nurses and charitable wings. Imagine lying in a bed beneath frescoed ceilings while a nun slathers honey on your leg and mutters a prayer for St. Pantaleon to speed the healing. Talk about holistic care. You let your gaze drift as he talks, and your eyes land on something tucked in the shadows. A tiny icon. Painted on wood, halo glowing faintly through soot. Christ, holding a scroll. Beneath it a dish of honeycomb, oozing. Slow and patient. A votive offering. Be just good marketing. Either way, it makes you grin. Fringe tidbit. Some hagiographies claim certain saints lived on nothing but bread and honey during desert fasts. Spiritual Keto, 6th century edition. The beekeeper sets a clay pot by your elbow and says, something about melisacomac oberelated remedies. He lists them off like a lullaby. Honey with garlic for cough. Honey with vinegar for sore throats. Honey with crushed pearl if you're feeling extravagant and vaguely ridiculous. You imagine some Byzantine noble choking down pearl-infused syrup just to flex on his gout. Historians still argue whether these recipes were medicine or performance art. But hey, who's counting when you're rich and dramatic? You thank him with a nod, leaving coins that feel heavier than they should. Outside, the alley hums low, the way it does when the city exhales after a long argument with itself. Lamps glow in their bronze cages, casting honey-colored halos on the stone. For a moment you picture the hive. Not the wooden boxes stacked in meadows, but the empire itself, cells upon cells. Each buzzing with commerce, prayer, ambition. You're just another drone passing through, sticky-fingered and wide-dash-eyed. As you wander deeper into the bazaar, the sound shifts. Gone is the gull clamor of the docks. Now it's softer fabric whispering against fabric, coins chiming like shy bells, laughter slipping around corners. You pass a spice merchant hawking saffron so vivid it could blind the sun. A glassblower coaxing molten blobs into goblets thin as dragonfly wings. And then you spot it. A tray of pastries so hypnotic you almost trip. Honey cakes, their tops. Lacquered in golden glaze, sprinkled with crushed nuts. You can practically hear your dentist sobbing in Greek. You buy one obviously, and the first bite is a scandal. Crisp shell, then a rush of sweetness that coats your tongue and drips down your wrist. Some say Byzantine desserts were so sticky, people joked they could double as wallpaper paste. Others whispered they lured lovers better than poetry. You're in no mood to argue. You just lick your fingers and wonder how anyone in this city has teeth left. Somewhere above the rooftops, a bell tolls along. Solemn note that rolls through the alleys like a slow tide. Evening prayers. Lamps bloom in windows, their flames trembling like bees caught mid-flight. You pause, pastry crumbs on your lips, and watch a monk glide past, his robe whispering over the stones. He carries a basket, and you don't need a prophecy to guess what's inside. Candles. Wax for light. Honey for sweetness. Theology for dessert. Everything in its place. You keep walking, the city stretching out like a hive gone cosmic. And the thought lingers. All this from docks to icons to pastries starts with a bee smaller than your thumb. A creature that never reads Aristotle. Never debates doctrine, never worries about tax ledgers, just works. And somehow, its labor stitches together an empire's economy, medicine, rituals, even its cravings. You smile. Because that's the kind of absurd beauty that makes history hum. And as the alley narrows into a tunnel of flickering light, You feel it again, that pull towards something deeper, stranger, sweeter than trade or theology. Like there's a secret in the wax and honey, waiting for you to taste it. Don't worry, you will. Just keep walking. You follow the sound of chanting nalo, resonant, curling through the air like smoke from unseen incense burners. It pulls you toward a courtyard where the city seems to pause, as if even Constantinople knows when to hold its breath. Columns ring the space like silent sentinels, their marble streaked with veins of green and gold. Lamps flicker in niches, soft halos trembling like candlelight in a dream. Above the night sky is a bowl of black glass, scattered with stars faint as old prayers. And then you see them. Hives. Not the rustic logs you'd expect in some countryside garden, but neat geometric boxes stacked against the wall like disciplined soldiers. Bees murmur in and out, their wings catching lamplight in quick, sacred flashes. You're in a monastery, though not the austere kind where everything smells like damp wool and regret. This place hums with purpose, literal hums from thousands of bees that seem to know they're on divine payroll. Monks drift among the hives, their robes brushing against thyme bushes that breathe out warm. Peppery notes every time a hem grazes the leaves. You wonder if the bees love it here. Herbs everywhere, water from a trickling fountain. And oh yes, humans who don't eat them. A good gig, all things considered. The monks move slowly, deliberately, like they're trying not to startle the insects or maybe the silence itself. They carry small clay pots and linen cloths, murmuring prayers as they work. To you, it looks like devotion dressed up as agriculture. To them, probably the other way around. One monk notices you watching and smiles, the kind of smile that could melt butter or at least soften stale bread. He beckons you closer. Step lightly, because who wants to annoy a monk holding a swarm in his bare hands? Yes, bare hands. He scoops bees like they're warm beads, letting them crawl over his fingers without so much as a wince. He says something in Greek, a phrase that sounds like honey rolling off a spoon. You catch a word, agios, holy. Here's your mainstream fact for the night. Monasteries in Byzantium weren't just spiritual powerhouses. They were economic engines, running everything from vineyards to scriptoria to, you guessed it, beekeeping. Why? Because beeswax was the Netflix subscription of the medieval church. Non-negotiable. Every candle burned in every chapel came from these tiny winged laborers. Without wax, no light for icons, no shimmering halos in the half-dark, no prayers. Flickering like stars inside Hagia Sophia and honey. Well, fasting rules were strict, but honey slipped through the loophole like a cat through a cracked door. Sweetness without sins. These monks up. But here's a fringe tidbit that makes you grin. Some Byzantine texts hint at bees being little theologians in disguise. Writers claim they symbolized virginity, obedience, even the soul's harmony with divine order. One homily basically says, look at bees, they don't fornicate and they work hard. Be like bees. You picture a monk wagging his finger at novices, shouting chastity, brothers, the bees are watching. It's adorable and mildly terrifying. The monk who beckoned you gestures toward a slab of wood, slick with combs glistening like sheets of amber glass. He presses a piece into your palm, sticky and warm, and nods for you to taste. You bite, and the comb collapses with a sigh, honey pooling on your tongue so lush it feels like velvet. This isn't market honey. This is monastery honey kissed by time and sanctified by chant. You expect a choir to burst from the shadows, singing your praises as you chew. You whisper something about anointing. Apparently honey wasn't just food. It anointed altars, relics, even the dead. Imagine lying in your marble tomb, swaddled in silk, with honey sealing your final prayers. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic purity or just really good embalming, but either way, it's sticky theology. The monk moves on, leaving you in the courtyard's hush. Bees drift like living incense, catching the glow of oil lamps. Somewhere a nightjar calls, its voice thin as silver wire, and the fountain murmurs on, like water gossiping. With stone, you tilt your head back and think, here, in this quiet hive of faith, every droplet of honey, every curl of wax carries centuries of meaning. but then you catch it movement at the far archway. Another monk, younger, arms full of scrolls. He's muttering, tripping slightly, because apparently, even in a monastery, the interns are overworked. He disappears into a shadowed hall, and you feel the tug of curiosity like a bee scenting nectar. What secrets does this place keep? Recipes, liturgies, or something stranger buzzing between the lines of scripture and science? You follow feet, whispering over worn stone, leaving the courtyard and its amber dreams behind. Ahead, a corridor yawns, lanterns winking like sleepy fireflies. The air grows cooler, threaded with the faint temps of ink and vellum. And just when you think the night can't get any deeper, the chanting starts again, soft, layered, honey poured into honey, until sound itself feels sweet. And you keep walking, because the story isn't done, not by a long shot. The corridor seems endless, like one of those dreams where doors keep multiplying the further you go. Each lamp throws its small circle of amber light, and in the gaps, the dark is thick enough to chew. You catch whispers, not voices, but the faint scratch of quills on parchment like 1,000 tiny legs crawling across silence. The smell hits next. Ink sharp as iron, vellum soft as old milk, beeswax smoke coiling lazily from unseen candles. It's a library, though. That word feels too modern, too neat. This is a treasury of thought scrolls and codices stacked in niches. Some bound in leather, some bare, their edges furred with time. And there they are, monks hunched over lecterns. Faces lit by oil lamps, eyes narrowed in the slow duel between fatigue and duty. They're copying. Always copying. Because in Byzantium, to write is to worship. Every letter laid down in that looping, spidery Greek script is like a prayer frozen on the page. You sidle closer, and their miniature bee, inked in the margin. Of a psalter, you almost laugh because of course they doodle bees. You imagine the scribe grinning, thinking, holy metaphors, Batman. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Byzantine scriptoria were the hard drives of their age, preserving not just scripture but science, law, and literature. In bees, they crept into texts like stowaways. You'd find entire treatises on apiculture tucked between homilies because monks weren't just soul shepherds. They were agricultural geeks. Their notes tell you what flowers yield the sweetest nectar, how to soothe an angry swarm, even the proper prayers to murmur while moving hives. Spoiler. Bees don't speak Greek, but hey, can't hurt. Now for the fringe tidbit, brace yourself. Some marginalia suggest monks believed bees could sense sin. One commentary warns novices not to approach hives after impure thoughts, lest the bees rebuke them with stings. You picture a trembling novice, guilty as charged, staring down a hive like it's Judge Judy? Honestly. If that doesn't keep you on the straight and narrow, nothing will. Historians still argue whether these warnings were metaphorical or just early beekeeping psychology. Maybe stings happened when someone smelled nervous or sweaty and the monks spun theology out of it. Or maybe they genuinely thought bees were tiny winged confessors with zero chill. Either way, it's a vibe. You trail a finger along a row of spines, your touch stirring centuries of dust. Some codices are fat as bricks, others slim and sly like they're hiding secrets. One, bound in cracked red leather, yawns open to reveal an illustration, a haloed saint flanked by weight for it to golden bees. Not lambs, not doves, bees. You wonder, is this a symbol of sweetness or an inside joke passed down through ink-stained generations? Whatever it is, it makes you grin like an idiot. And just when you're sinking into the honeyed lull of the scriptorium, sound slices through the clink of metal, faint but sharp as a bee sting. You freeze. It comes again, followed by a sigh. That sounds too human to be the wind. You glance down a side aisle and spot him, a monk at a workbench, head bowed, something glinting in his hands. You move closer quiet, because stealth is sexy, right? On the bench, wax, pale bricks of it, stacked like golden loaves. He's carving thin sheets, pressing them between frames, wax tablets, the medieval notepad. Before paper was common, Byzantines jotted notes on wax, scratching thoughts into its soft skin with a stylus. And here's the kicker. These tablets were erasable. Warm the wax, smooth it over, and boom, your sins or shopping lists vanish like gossip in the wind. Suddenly, you feel bad for your overpriced planner. The monk hums softly as he works, his voice a low river of syllables. You think about the double life of beeswax candles in chapels, tablets in scriptoria, seals on imperial decrees. Without bees, half this empire's admin would collapse faster than your New Year's resolutions. Funny how history clings to such tiny wings. The hum deepens, and for a heartbeat, it seems the room is joining in the buzz of bees bleeding through the walls like a memory, a song older than stone. You imagine the monastery as a hive, monks as worker bees, knowledge dripping like honey into the comb of time. It's poetic, sure, but tonight everything feels dipped in metaphor. Your eyelids droop. The air is syrupy with lamp smoke and silence. Thick enough to wrap around you like a shawl. You want to curl up on the cold marble, let the chant and the scratching of pens lull you into some medieval nap. But then always, a butt footsteps echo from deeper in the stacks. Quick, sharp, purposeful. Someone's in a hurry, and not the sleepy, sandals flapping kind of hurry you expect from monks. You flatten against the shelves as a figure sweeps past, robes swirling like ink in water. He clutches a codex tight against his chest, the way a kid grips his phone when Mom walks in. His hood is up, but you catch the flicker of eyes bright, urgent, maybe a little afraid. He vanishes into a stairwell, and the door sighs shut behind him. Now your curiosity is buzzing louder than a hive in July. What's in that book? A lost recipe for royal honey cakes? Secret on bees and prophecy? Something stranger? Something dangerous enough to smuggle under moonlight? You pull away from the wall, heart drumming like a boat horn, and follow the sound of his fading steps down the spiral stairs into the monastery's underbelly, where the air tastes of damp stone and old secrets. The stairs coil tighter than a startled snake, each step slick with centuries of candle grease and the sweat of men who've carried their doubts down here. You trail your hand along the wall, fingers skating over carvings worn soft as soap. Some are crosses, some are letters, and hella one is a bee, wings spread like a tiny herald. Coincidence? Not tonight. Down here, even coincidences feel scripted. The air cools as you descend, flavored with damp stone, faint mold, and the tang of old iron. It's the kind of cold that creeps up your sleeves like a thief, until it settles in your bones and starts rearranging the furniture. A drop of water falls somewhere ahead, loud as a drum in this vault of silence. And then, because every Gothic staircase needs an accessory, a faint orange glow leaks from the landing below. You squint, because your inner voice says horror. Movie logic alert, but your feet, they're on team bad decisions. At the bottom, the door yawns open like a tired jaw. Beyond it, the chamber stretches wide and low, its ceiling ribbed with vaults that look like frozen waves. The glow comes from lanterns hooked on chains, swaying gently as if stirred by a phantom breeze. Shadows leap and crouch like guilty dogs. And there he is, the hooded monk from upstairs, kneeling at an altar of stone. The codex still clutched to his chest like a child. You ease closer, your shoes whispering on the damp floor. On the altar sits a brass basin filled with honey, so thick it gleams like molten amber. A single candle burns beside it, its flame bending in the draught. And you notice the wax dripping slow, curling into shapes that if you squint look like tiny wings. Okay, now it's officially creepy. The monk murmurs words you can't catch, his voice dragging like smoke. Then he opens the codex, and the script glitters in the lantern light gold leaf, like sun splashed on water. You lean, shameless, because subtlety died 3 steps ago. The text is Greek, ornate as lace, and between the curling lines bloom illustrations, bees, hives, vines, heavy with blossoms. And in the margino, this is where it gets spicy drawings of men kneeling before a hive, hands raised like supplicants. Ritual? Allegory? Someone's fan art? Here's your mainstream historical fact for tonight. Byzantine mysticism had a soft spot for bees. They weren't just insect farmers' delight. They symbolized purity, resurrection, even the soul itself. The church loved that bees were born, or so they thought. From flowers without how to put this delicately any obvious carnal activity. Cue theology doing jazz hands, look. Bees are basically monks with wings. Now the quirky tidbit. Some fringe manuscripts claim honey, mixed with certain herbs could unlock visions. Not your, ooh, I saw Jesus and a toast crumb visions full. Technicolor, God in line, one visions. Recipes survive, though scholars debate whether they were devotional aids or just medieval party tricks. You imagine a monk, pupils wide as dinner plates, announcing, "Brothers, I just talked to an angel." Or maybe a very chatty cloud. And yep, historians still argue whether these honey rites were legit spiritual practices or apocryphal gossip. Some insist the monks were high on incense and sleep deprivation, not bee juice cocktails. Others whisper about nectar cults that lingered in remote monasteries like this, humming beneath the official liturgy. Either way, someone cared enough to illuminate a whole codex about it. Dripping in gold like a rapper's chain, the monk dips his fingers into the honey, slow and reverent, then touches the page as if sealing a pact. You flinch because sticky. Books are a crime, but he doesn't care. Traces a circle, then presses his honeyed hand to his lips. His eyes close, and for a moment, the chamber hums not with sound, but with something thicker, like silence wearing perfume. Your scalp prickles. A movement snags your eye. Behind the altar, a curtain of heavy velvet shivers. You swear you hear buzzing not imagined, not metaphorical, real as summer in your grandmother's garden. And the smell sweet, floral, sharp rolls out in a wave. You can almost taste it, honey tangled with lavender and something darker. Something like resin burning on coals. The monk rises, codex cradled in his arms, and vanishes through the curtain. You hover, torn between follow him and go home and Google beekeeping monasteries. Guess which side wins? Yeah, curiosity's got you by the scruff again. You edge forward, fingers brushing the velvetets damp, like moss after. Rain and slip into the hidden passage. The tunnel beyond is narrow, its walls sweating like nervous stone. The buzzing grows louder, rolling in waves that throb through your teeth. Lantern-like gutters ahead, and you realize you're moving into a cavernous space that smells alive. Then the sound swells until it's everything. A choir of wings. Vibrating through marrow and memory, you round a bend and the sight stops you cold. Hives. Dozens stacked like reliquaries, glowing in the lamplight. Bees swarm in shimmering clouds, their bodies flickering bronze, their wings slicing the dark. Into ribbons of gold? Wax drips like stalactites, forming strange, lumpy altars. And the monk? He kneels among them, head bowed as if the hive itself were a tabernacle. Your breath catches. This isn't farming. This is worship. And you're not supposed to be here. The bees know it too. You feel their eyes, thousands of tiny mirrors, tilting toward your heat. The hum sharpens, threads of sound knitting tighter, faster. The monk looks up at last, his face slick with honey and light, and whispers a word that curls through the cavern like smoke. It sounds like your name. The sound clings to you like wet fabric, that hum climbing out of the hives and slipping under your skin. You freeze because every survival instinct in your DNA is currently screaming. Nope, nope, absolutely nope. But curiosity? It's like that. Reckless friend who grabs the steering wheel during a road trip, chaotic, loud, and somehow still in charge. So you stay. The monk doesn't move closer. He just kneels, a silhouette lacquered in honey light, bees walking lazy constellations. Across his hood, he whispers again, softer this time. But the word isn't quite your name now. Knits, something older. Vowels stretched like taffy. The sound seems to ripple through the air, tugging at your ribs. Okay, who knew honey parties came with a soundtrack from another dimension? Your gaze drifts to the hives, these strange Baroque towers built from wax and time. Some are carved with tiny symbols, spirals and sigils that itch at the edges of memory. Others glisten under sheets of resin, as if preserved for eternity. Maybe just to look extra creepy. Bees slip in and out of slits like living punctuation marks, and the smell, oh man, it's a full buffet of sensations. Warm honey, crushed herbs, something floral, something faintly animal, like fur damp with morning dew. Here's your mainstream fact for the evening. Byzantine monasteries, particularly in isolated regions, really did keep biz not just for honey in your tea, but for wax to make candles. Candles weren't just mood lighting, they were essential for liturgy. Pure beeswax burned clean, symbolizing the Virgin Mary's purity because, in the theology of the time, bees were thought to reproduce without mating. Yuppies as poster children for immaculate vibes. Now for the quirky tidbit. Certain monastic records hint that wax from specific hives, when mixed with holy water and herbs, was applied to manuscript pages to protect them against pests and get this evil influences so your Bible stayed crispy and demon-free. Imagine pitching that as a product today, now with extra holiness, guaranteed to repel moths and minor demons. Historians still argue whether these rituals were practical, superstition, or deeply symbolic theology. Some say monks genuinely believed beeswax absorbed sanctity through its purity. Others shrugged and say, look, it was a humid century. Bugs were the real Antichrist. Whatever the truth, wax mattered almost as much as the words it sealed. Back. In the cavern, the monk finally moves. He rises like sap drawn up a tree, his robes dripping amber threads. From the shadows, others emerge, because of course there are more. Silent shapes, hoods pulled low, hands sticky with resinous gleam. They form a circle around the hives, their footsteps whispering over stone. Each carries something, a candle stub, a vial of oil, a sprig of dried thyme. You, standing there like the least prepared wedding crasher in history, realize this isn't random beekeeping, it's choreography. One monk lifts a brass censer, smoke unfurling in coils so sweet it makes your teeth ache. The scent crashes. Over you, honey braided with frankincense, and something bitter wormwood maybe, curls into your nose, down your throat, into lungs that now feel lined with velvet. You blink and the air looks thicker, as if light decided to take the day off. The chanting starts low, a hum braided through the bee's own buzz until you can't tell flesh from wing, prayer from vibration. Hypnotic, that steady drone like the earth itself is purring. Under your feet, you sway before you realize it, your pulse syncing with the rhythm, your breath dragging in honeyed loops. The lead monk opens the codex again, its pages gleaming like they've swallowed sunlight whole. He dips a reed pen into the basin of honey and writes not words, but sigils, loops and hooks that glisten wet and gold. The ink trails like syrup, thick and deliberate, sealing something older than language onto the vellum. Your scalp prickles. Because this isn't history anymore, it's myth wearing a cassock. A stray bee lands on your hand, its legs brushing your skin like threads of static. You freeze, then laugh under your breath. Because, let's face it, one sting, and this turns from creepy documentary to a story time. But the bee just sits there, a tiny sentinel, as if weighing your worth. When it lifts away, the hum spikes, like a silent consensus has been reached. Then the twist. The monks part, revealing an object on a pedestal behind the hives. It's a reliquary, all filigree and faded jewels. But what it holds isn't a saint's finger or a splinter of cross. Nope. Nestled in velvet like royalty is a queen bee. Preserved in amber so clear it seems alive, her wings trembling under trapped light. Here's the scholarly riddle. A few Byzantine texts mention Apis Regina, the queen as emblem of divine order. Some argue it was purely symbolica, a neat metaphor for hierarchy in the empire. Others mutter about cultic practices, whispers of relics that weren't bones but bees. Because nothing says holiness like eternal insect royalty, you edge closer, your breath frosting in the cool, honey-thick air. The queen glows like a captured sunset, and suddenly everything makes sense. The honey rituals, gold-script prayers, the velvet-draped tunnels. This isn't about farming. Never was. The hum peaks, a tidal wave of sound pressing against your ribs, your skull, your thoughts. And then, because your life apparently needs more plot twists, the lead monk looks up, eyes gleaming like resin under lamplight, and lifts the reliquary toward you. Take, he whispers, voice hoarse as old vellum. She waits. your hands. Rise without your permission, and the reliquary tilts toward your palms. It's warm alive, warm and heavier than it should be, as if packed with all the silence of centuries. The buzzing swells, drowning out everything, until you can't hear your own breath, your own name, just the wings, the endless golden wings. And then, as the weight settles in your hands, the lights gutter, shadows flood like ink, and something moves inside the amber. It moves. Darkness rolls in like smoke poured through a funnel, swallowing the honey glow and leaving only the throb of wings. Your vision narrows to the reliquary in your hands, the queen shimmering under her amber coffin like a fossilized star. Impossibly, that star flickers. Once, twice, and you swear you see her thorax twitch. You don't breathe. Don't blink. Because either the Byzantine bees have achieved immortality, or your brain finally packed its bags and moved to a saner timeline. The hum gnaws at your bones now, vibrating inside your marrow like someone tuning a cello under your skin. The monks stand frozen, silhouettes carved from wax, their hoods pooling darkness where faces should be. Slowly, the lead monk steps forward, his bare feet kissing the stone with soft, obscene wetness. He lowers his head close to yours, and when he speaks, it isn't words, it's a single note, low and endless, the kind of sound you feel in your teeth. The other monks join in, their voices weaving into the hum until the chamber is one living throat. Okay, let's break for a historical palate cleanser before this turns into a horror podcast. Byzantine monks really did attribute mystical significance. 2 bees, not only for theological purity, but also as a symbol of communal order each. Be a humble servant of a greater hive, much like a monk in the cloister. And here's the mainstream fact you can chew on. Emperor Justinian's legal code actually included regulations about beekeeping rights. Disputes over swarms could escalate into lawsuits because nothing screams civilization. It's like suing your neighbor over runaway insects. Now, for your quirky nugget. In some rural Byzantine communities, honey wasn't just food, it was medicine, currency, and, oddly enough, a medium for messages. Travelers would coat wooden tablets in honey and inscribe short notes with sticks. The recipient would lick the honey away to reveal the writing. It's basically the world's stickiest email system. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or just a local oddity. Let's be honest. If someone sent you a text, you had to lick to read. You'd remember it forever. Back to your little predicament. The reliquary grows hotter in your hands, the amber sweating droplets of something that smells like nectar laced with iron. A crack appears along its surface. Hairline at first, then widening like a yawn. The monk's humming spikes, the pitch, spiraling upward until your eardrums beg for mercy. The queen moves again. It's time no doubt her wings quiver, shedding dust like gold pollen. The crack splits wider, a sticky thread dribbling out, curling down your wrist. But a drop. The reliquary yeet it straight into history's recycle bin, but your fingers won't obey. They clutch tighter, like puppets on invisible strings. The lead monk extends his hand, palm up, trembling slightly, as if even he knows this is a terrible idea. His sleeve slips back, revealing an arm tattooed with black ink spirals designs that mimic honeycomb, looping endlessly toward his wrist. You stare at those markings, and your brain, being the traitor it is, whispers, what if those aren't tattoos? What if that's something moving under his skin? A reliquary shudders. The ember bursts like brittle sugar, shards pattering onto stone. And there she is, Shapus Regina, her body slick and trembling, wings slicked tight against her abdomen. She isn't fossilized, isn't dead. She's alive. And she's enormous, too big for any hive you've seen. Her carapace iridescent like oil on water. Her eyes catch the lamplight and throw it back in hexagonal splinters. You brace for her, to sting you into oblivion, but instead, she crawls slow, deliberate up your palm, her legs gripping with a stickiness that makes your stomach drop. She moves toward your wrist, your forearm, and you freeze because there's a limit to how many insect horror scenarios a person can process in one lifetime. Here comes your next fun historical twist. Some scholars speculate that beeswax seals were used on relic containers not just for purity, but as a symbolic lock-breaking. The seal was a ritual act, signaling that the contents were sacred and dangerous. Did anyone imagine that dangerous meant giant undead bug queen? Probably not. But still, points for dramatic irony. The monks kneel, foreheads pressed to stone, as the queen perches on your shoulder. Her wings unfold, slow and deliberate, releasing a shimmer of golden dust that hangs in the air like molten sunlight. Then no boy she speaks. Not in words, exactly. It's more like the hum rearranges itself into thoughts that detonate softly in your skull. She remembers. She waits. The hive must rise. Your mouth goes desert dry, because apparently your evening snack of haunted honey and secret tunnels now comes with a side of prophecy. Great, just great. The queen launches off your shoulder, a silent explosion of motion, and lands on the codex still open on its stand. The ink glows brighter, symbols curling and writhing as if waking from a nap centuries too long. The pages ripple, wax edges melting like butter. And then, because reality clearly left the chatahole, blossoms in the parchment black and slick, and bees begin to pour out. First a trickle, then a flood. Thousands of them, their bodies spangled with pollen and shadow, boiling across the floor in a golden tide. You backpedal, heart ricocheting off your ribs, but the monks, they open their arms, they welcome the swarm. Bees crawl up their sleeves into their hoods, drenching them until they look less like men and more like moving statues of wax and wing. Monk tilts his head back, mouth open, and bees vanish inside, like they're answering some terrible altar call. You gag because, nope, no amount of Byzantine trivia prepped you for voluntary bee ingestion. And yet you can't look away. The hum swells into a roar, shaking the stone under your feet. The codex collapses inward, a vortex sucking light and sound and reason into itself. The queen hovers above it all, her wings scissoring arcs of gold, her eyes locked on yours like two suns that know your browsing history. Then, in a voice that isn't sound but certainty, she drops the kicker. Follow. Or perish. You don't even have time to argue before the floor splits open beneath your feet, honey and darkness rushing up to swallow you whole. You fall, but not like in nightmares where gravity snaps you awake. This fall is syrup slow, like sinking through liquid amber. Your limbs drag against invisible currents, and for one horrifying second you think you're trapped inside a giant honeycomb cell. Light fractures around you in hexagonal shards, each one a frozen image. A Byzantine monk smiling with waxed lips. A swarm boiling across parchment, the queen's wings slicing gold arcs into the air. Your ears ring with the echo of her command: follow or perish. A neat little ultimatum for someone who, 5 minutes ago, was just here for a bedtime history lesson. And here's your first breadcrumb of actual history amid this gooey chaos. Byzantine artisans weren't just casual honey enthusiasts. They engineered candles of such purity they became symbols of spiritual light. Emperor Constantine VII even wrote about bees as metaphors for divine wisdom. Whether he also wrote about being sucked into an interdimensional honey pit, historians still argue whether that's a missing chapter or my personal fever dream. Your descent slows, and suddenly your feet touch solid ground. Except when you look down, there is no ground. Just a glassy plain stretching into forever, reflecting your face like a warped mirror. Beneath that pane, thousands, maybe millions of bees moving in synchronized patterns, spelling out shapes you almost recognize. Letters, runes, a passive-aggressive Yelp review from the insect kingdom. Hard to say. You take a step, and the surface flexes under your weight like gelatin. Behind you, a soft chime echoes, and there she is, the queen hovering effortlessly.
Oh, yes, please.
Her wings stirring the air into a sweet, warm breeze that smells like fermented honey and candle smoke. She circles you once, then lands on a pedestal that wasn't there a second ago. On it rests a bowl carved from translucent wax, brimming with something that looks like honey, but shimmers with its own light. She dips her mandibles in, lifts, and a single drop elongates, trembling like molten glass. It doesn't fall. They're waiting. Okay, pause for quirky fact time in Byzantine pharmacology. Honey was a cornerstone ingredient for remedies. Mixed with vinegar, it treated sore throats. Blended with herbs, it soothed burns. There's even evidence it was used in embalming processes. So yastiki situations are historically accurate. Back to you, standing in a place that feels like the inside of a saint's fever dream. The queen extends her forelegs, gesturing if a bug can gesture for you to drink. Your survival instinct screams, nope, nope, nope. But curiosity's like, bro, it's ancient honeyglow juice. Live a little, you kneel, the surface pulsing. Under your knees, the bowl radiates warmth. Not burning, just comforting. Like a hearth fire you didn't know you missed. You lean in, and the scent crashes into your wildflowers. Myrrh, something sharp like resin. You sip the first taste, detonates behind your eyes. Sweet, yes, but layered like drinking sunlight braided with time. Your veins light up in a gold thread lattice. You hear no, you feel hives awakening, wings stretching, countless voices humming one word, unity, and then the visions hit. You see Constantinople not as ruins or faded icons, but alive, vibrating. With color, blue domes, glitter like insect eyes. Processions glide through streets, priests swinging censers heavy with beeswax candles, smoke curling like prayers you almost understand. You see rooftop apiaries dotting the skyline, monks in black robes tending hives, their fingers moving in ritual patterns. Then the vision pivots, sharp as a knife twist. You see fire licking those same rooftops, hives collapsing in molten heaps, bees swarming through smoke, aimless, panicked, city falling while honey hardens in broken jars. And a voice threading through it all. They forgot the pact. Do not forget. The vision fractures. You're back on the glass plane, bowl empty, queen watching with eyes that burn like tiny suns. Her wings vibrate once thrummed. The bees beneath your feet surge, patterns reshaping into something clearer now. A map, lines curling into coasts, rivers, mountains. And at its heart a pulsing golden dot where Constantinople once stood. Historians still argue whether Byzantine maps were accurate or symbolic, but this one, it feels alive, like it's waiting for you to step onto it, which is inconvenient because the queen just points again. As much as a bug can point toward that glowing center, you take a breath, the kind you take before diving into cold water or bad decisions. One step, two. The glass ripples, and suddenly, the map isn't under you, it's around you. You're soaring above green valleys, glittering seas, roads like silver threads stitched across a living tapestry. The hum rises, bees spiraling around you like golden snow. The queen glides at your side, her thoughts threading into yours. Witness, remember, mend. You want to ask, mend what? How? With what DIY kit? But words dissolve in the wind tearing past. Your face. The horizon tilts, light bends, and then you're plunging not down this time, but forward into a city blazing with mosaics and incense smoke. Constantinople, whole breathing, waiting. Your feet hit cobblestones that feel too solid to be part of any dream, and for a heartbeat, you just stand there, stunned. Constantinople stretches around you, vibrant and impossibly detailed. The air tastes like salt from the Bosphorus layered, with the sweetness of honey cakes hawked by vendors in bright tunics. Bells chime faintly across the hills, blending with the distant roar of a crowd, maybe a chariot race in the hippodrome, because apparently your midnight stroll includes premium seating, and there she is, hovering at your shoulder, the queen.
Not buzzing now?
Silent, regal, and glowing faintly, as if the entire golden light budget of the Byzantine treasury got dumped into her exoskeleton. She tilts her head again, as much as a bee can tilt, and you know what that means? Walk, so you do. Your sandals. Wait. When did you get sandals? Slap against sun-warmed stone as you follow her through narrow lanes, strung with awnings of crimson and blue. The voices of merchants swell around you, their Greek, sharp and melodic. Jars of amber honey glisten in stalls, catching sunlight like captured fire. Bees drift lazily between hanging herbs, thyme, sage, oregano pollinating without a care. Because here, even insects seem to have tenure. Here's your mainstream fact of the night. Beekeeping wasn't just an agricultural side hustle in Byzantium. It was a cornerstone of urban life. Apiaries thrived on rooftops, in monastery gardens, even near imperial estates. Honey-sweetened wine, preserved fruit, and sealed medicinal concoctions in the city's pharmacies. Imagine every second rooftop. Hiding a hive, that's how normal it was. And the quirky tidbit. Byzantine tax codes, because who doesn't love a little fiscal spice in their bedtime? Story actually mentioned honey and wax as taxable goods, somewhere in Constantinople. A bureaucrat sat under an oil lamp, calculating how many candles a monk owed the empire. Try explaining that as your side hustle. Yeah, I count bees for the government. Your queen guide drifts toward a shaded courtyard tucked behind a basilica. The place hums not metaphorically. Real bees swarm around trellises heavy with vines. At the center, an old man kneels by a wooden hive, his beard silver, his robe patched at the elbows. He murmurs to the bees like old friends. You crouch behind a fig tree, because what else do you do when you're in a temporal field trip with an insect monarch? The man lifts a frame from the hive, dripping gold. He holds it to the light, and you swear the wax patterns pulse, just for a second. He whispers something, a prayer, maybe, or a pact. His words coil around you like incense smoke, harmony, in labor and in faith. Historians still argue whether Byzantine monks genuinely considered bees sacred, or whether that's just modern romanticism grafted onto history. But watching this guy cradle a honeycomb like it's a holy relic, you're leaning toward? Yep, they were basically bee whisperers. The queen lands on the monk's hand, and for a split second, you panic giant bug alert, but he doesn't flinch. He nods like he's been expecting her. His eyes flick toward you, and there it is. The universal gesture of trouble come here. You step out, feeling like a kid summoned to the principal's office, except the principal smells like myrrh and fermented honey. The monk studies you, his gaze soft but sharp, like he sees every decision you've ever made, including that time you Googled how much honey is too much honey. Speaks, his voice rough silk. You've tasted her gift. You nod, because words feel like contraband here. Then you carry the map. And before you can ask, "Excuse me? What now?" he reaches out and presses his thumb to your forehead. Warmth floods, you not burning but deep, like sunlight under your skin. When he pulls away, your vision glitches. The courtyard fades, replaced by sprawling fields stitched with hives, then a coastline crawling with ships, then fire eating through timber roofs. Images slam into you in a dizzying loop trade. Roots, plunder, smoke. Smoke you stumble, knees hitting stone, breath shuddering. And in that molten whirlpool of visions, you hear Hertha Queen threading calm through chaos. The chain breaks. The pact dissolves. Mend it, or all hives fall silent. Okay, real talk. Historians debate what really caused Byzantine agriculture to collapse in later centuries. Some point to climate shifts, others to endless wars draining resources. No one mentions magical bee packs, but hey, maybe they weren't invited to that footnote. The monk helps you up, his grip firm as iron cloaked in wool. Go to the hive of saints, he murmurs, as if that's a totally normal sentence in the 10th century. Only there will the song return, and then blink he's gone. The courtyard empties. No bees, no queen. Just you, standing under a sky bruised with twilight. Far off, the hippodrome roars like a waking beast. Closer, the air thickens with incense and something darker smoke that doesn't belong to candles. You know what's coming. You've seen the flames in visions. And suddenly, this doesn't feel like a cozy history podcast anymore. It feels like a countdown. So you run. Your sandals slap the stones as you push through crowds. Markets blurring into streaks of color. Bells hammer the air. Somewhere behind you, a hive hums like a storm wound tight. And high above, for just Instant, you glimpse Hura, flash of gold against the darkening. Sky leading, you toward a dome crowned in light. Constantinople is holding its breath, and so are you. The world tilts forward as you run, the Byzantine capital unspooling in fast motion around you. The setting sun smears the city in molten hues bronze rooftops. Purple banners, towers flaring like candle flames in a drafty hall. Your breath feels ragged, but your legs keep pounding. Somewhere in this labyrinth of marble and mosaics waits the hive of saints. And apparently, the fate of every buzzing thing depends on you. The queen's glint hovers ahead, a pinpoint of gold threading. Through the chaos, she drifts above the crowd like some tiny smug comet, always just far enough to keep you chasing. Meanwhile, Constantinople hums in its evening rhythm. Shopkeepers hauling shutters down. Beggars rattling clay bowls, mule carts creaking under an amphory of wine. The smell is a slap of contradictions, olive oil, fish guts, incense, and yes, honey melting on pastry in some tavern you desperately wish you could stop at. Here's your solid historical anchor for this whirlwind. By the 10th century, this city was the nerve center of an empire stretching across 3 continents. Spices from India, furs from Russia, silk from China, everything funneled through these gates. And bees, they were the quiet power players. Honey didn't just sweeten life, it funded prayers. Monasteries farmed it, merchants sold it, emperors taxed it. In a world without refined sugar, honey was the golden ticket. But now, something darker swirls under that golden surface. The visions the monk shoved into your skull keep replaying. Smoldering hives, dead fields, a silence so deep, you can almost taste it. And then always the dome of a great church glowing like a second sun. That's your waypoint. So you keep running, threading past cloaked figures, whispering news of border wars. Through alleys where cats stalk rats fat on grain from imperial barges, you burst into a square, heart hammering, and there it is, the hive of saints. Except, surprise, it's not an actual hive. It's a church, massive and austere, its marble skin veined like frozen lightning. Candlelight spills from the doors, carrying a hush so deep it feels like velvet pressed to your ears. The queen darts inside. You follow, lungs clawing for air. Inside, the world softens. Cool stone breathes against your skin, scented with wax and something faintly floral. Candles swarm the nave like captive stars. Icons shimmer in gold leaf, their painted eyes locked on eternity. And then there it is, tucked behind the altar, a reliquary shaped like a hive, carved from ivory and banded in silver. Real bees crawled lazily over its surface, sipping offerings of honey smeared on the lid. You freeze, 'cause this isn't normal, even by Byzantine standards. The queen lands on the reliquary. The bees part like obedient soldiers, forming a living halo. And then, in a move straight out of your personal nightmare file, the hive's lid stirs on its own. A whisper seeps out, too soft to be Greek, too slippery to pin down. It curls under your skin, tasting like secrets. Now for tonight's quirky tidbit. Byzantine relic cults were intense. People kissed bones, carried saint dust in pendants, even mixed holy water with honey for healing brews. Scholars argue whether these rituals were acts of pure faith or something closer to early biohacking. Either way, nobody's writing about. Reliquaries doubling as insect condos accept you. Apparently your pulse slows, but your thoughts spin like a wheel greased in olive oil. You step closer, drawn by that whisper. It feels less like words, more like a pulse syncing with your veins. The queen turns, her compound eyes catching the candlelight. And for one wild second, you swear you hear her speak, not buzzing, not telepathy, but actual speech. Soft as beeswax melting. Seal the breach. The swarm waits. Before you can. Ask what breach? What swarm? What is happening to my life? The reliquary cracks open. Not wide just enough for a curl of golden vapor to slither out. It smells like summer meadows braided with lightning. It strokes your face, your hair, your thoughts. Images ignite again: burned hives, collapsing towers, bees scattering like sparks. And something new. A dark river of soldiers marching under banners slashed with red, their swords glinting like fangs. Historians still argue whether the Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople was inevitable, or the ultimate betrayal of Christendom. But standing here, knee-deep in prophetic bee fog, you suspect the empire's fall wasn't just politics. Something older was fraying, something humming, the vapor coils tighter. A hum swells not from bees this time, but from the reliquary itself, as if it's tuning to a frequency your bones can barely handle. The queen leaps skyward, circling your head like a gilded halo gone rogue. Then she darts toward the great dome, vanishing into shadows that ripple like stirred honey. You know what that means? You climb. Marble steps spiral upward, slick with candle drips. Your breath echoes like a fugitive prayer. Above, the hum thickens, blending with distant chants. You grip the railing, hauling yourself into a gallery that overlooks the navond. Then higher, into the hollow belly of the dome, where frescoes bloom in twilight hues. Saints hover on clouds that feel closer to smoke than pigment, and at the center, floating in a shaft of moonlight, is the queen. Only she's not small anymore. She's massive, a silhouette stitched from gold filaments and shadow, her wings spanning wider than the altar below. The sound rolling from her is not a buzz now, it's a choir. It's layered and relentless, like every hymn you've ever remembered. You think about running, you don't. Instead, you step forward into the light, your heart thudding like a war. Drum and whisper the only thing that makes sense, though you don't know where it came from. Show me the breach. And the dome splits open. The crack in the dome doesn't look real at first. It's too smooth, too deliberate, as if some cosmic chisel just scored a line straight across heaven. Dust drifts like powdered gold in moonlight, and the stars beyond blink cold and sharp. Wind tumbles in, carrying the scent of wildflowers that have no business blooming over Constantinople. You edge closer, palms sweaty on the gallery's stone balustrade. Below, the nave is a galaxy of candlelight. Worshippers oblivious to the fact their ceiling is splitting open like a ripe fig. The reliquary hum has dropped to a low throb, heartbeat slow, terrifying in its steadiness. And there's the queen. Now hanging midair near the breach, her wings stretched into shimmering blades of light. They vibrate soundlessly, but the pressure behind your eyes feels like someone is tuning your skull to a hymn only bees can sing. The images slam back into your mind-burned hives, dead monks, and now something worse, a tide of darkness spilling. Over plains, blotting out rivers, staining the sky with smoke. You taste metal and honey on your tongue. Seal the breach, her earlier whisper repeats in your head like a glitchy mantra. Which is cute because you have zero tools, zero plans, and zero training in supernatural beekeeping architecture. All you've got is your aching legs, a racing pulse, and maybe a vague prayer to whichever saint handles pest control. Here's a solid historical nugget for you to chew on while you panic. Byzantine architecture wasn't just about beauty. Was theology in stone? Domes symbolized the heavens. Every mosaic, every column, every echo of chant was meant to mirror celestial order, which means this crack. It's more than structural damage. It's a cosmic metaphor with very sharp teeth. You inch closer to the queen, raising your voice over. The wind. How? It rips out of you, raw and useless. She doesn't answer, not in words. Instead, her wings flare, and suddenly you're airborne, sucked into the breach like a breadcrumb in a whirlpool. There's a flash blue, then gold. Then a color your brain refuses to name, and the next thing you know, you're dangling over a world that isn't Constantinople. It's vast, not empty, but humming with motion. Fields stretch in endless tessellations, blooming with flowers that pulse like beating hearts. Rivers gleam like mercury ribbons, threading through forests that murmur without wind. And above it all hangs a sun that looks almost familiar, except it swarms. It's not a sphere of fire, it's a globe of bees, billions moving in synchronized arcs, a living star. You dangle there, staring, trying not to scream. When the queen glides up beside you, calm, massive and terrifying in her grace. Her eyes hold galaxies, fractal and cold. This is the order you fracture. The thought presses against your mind, heavy as a cathedral bell, and just as you're about to ask me, personally, I'm a tourist here, the vision twists, the fields blacken, flowers curl into ash. That sunbeam mass implodes with a sound like 1,000 trumpets being swallowed whole, and then whispers, not one but many, layering like parchment. The breach widens. The silence comes. Choose. You're falling now through honeyed light, through smoke, through your own ragged gasp until marble slams your back and knocks reality into place. You're on the gallery floor, blinking against the flicker of candles. The dome above, seamless again. No crack, no queen. Just saints frozen in pigment smiles that suddenly feel smug. Your chest heaves, your ears ring. Your hands, sticky with honey? You don't even want to know why. Here's tonight's quirky tidbit. Byzantine folks loved honey not just for food but for healing wounds. Mix it with wine and resin, slap it on a gash, and congratulations, you're basically an imperial Scholars still argue whether that was medical genius or medieval placebo. But it worked well enough to keep soldiers patching each other up between wars. Maybe you should try it because your palms sting like you've just wrestled a beehive barehanded. You stagger to your feet. Lo, the reliquary sits silent, bees gone like they were never there. But in the hush, you catch a faint hump familiar now, intimate, like a lullaby whispered through wax. It coils around your thoughts, threading with one command, clear as a blade. Find the seal. Close the breach, where everything drowns in silence. You don't know where the seal is. You don't know what silence means. But you know this, the empire. The hives, maybe even the whole buzzing order of existence somehow. It's hanging by your trembling fingers, and you're out of time, because from outside, beyond the thick church doors, comes the sound of boots. Dozens, maybe hundreds. A chorus. Of iron on stone, you edge to a window, glance down and your stomach turns. Soldiers. Rows of them. Not Byzantine troops, but strangers, their armor glinting with crosses, their banners bleeding red. The Crusaders have arrived, and the hum in your head spikes like a blade drawn from a sheath. Boots strike like war drums outside the doors, each thud a countdown you can't stop hearing. Torches flare in the courtyard, painting the marble in jagged stripes of fire and shadow. You've read about sieges before pages in dusty books, neatly footnoted, but nothing prepared you for the sound. It isn't shouting, not yet. It's the inhale before the scream. It's the taut silence before steel meets bone. You press yourself flat against a column, breath shallow. The reliquary still. Sits on its altar like a smug little god, lid closed, humming soft enough that you feel it in your teeth. The queen's command pounds in your skull. Find the seal. Close the breach. Here's the thing, though. You have no idea what a cosmic bee seal looks like. A wax stamp? A mosaic? Saint's pinky finger dipped in honey. Your brain isn't exactly a Byzantine architecture Rolodex. You glance around, scanning every inch of the gallery. Candles gutter in brass holders. Icons glint in gold leaf. And then your eyes snag on it above the altar, half hidden in shadow, a disc. Small, but radiating like moonlight, trapped in marble. At first you think it's just another ornament, maybe a relic plate. But then it pulses just once like a heartbeat made of silver. Congratulations, you've found your MacGuffin. Now good luck grabbing it before an army redecorates this basilica in blood tones. You bolt down the spiral stair. Sandals slapping stone. Below, the air thickens with incense and dust. Whispers crawl along the walls. Latin, not Greek. Your gut twists. They're inside. The Crusaders didn't wait for a polite invitation. You skid to the altar, knees bruising on marble, and reach for the disc. It's warm. It's warm, like someone's been holding it for hours. The instant your fingers close, 1,000 bees erupt behind your eyes' thoughts. Memories, fragments of alien order all stinging at once. And then you're somewhere else again. No basilica, no Crusaders, just a void threaded with golden strands, each one vibrating like a plucked harp string. The queen hovers ahead, vast and terrible, her wings slicing reality into ribbons. Behind her, shapes coil their queens, maybe, or something older, darker. With stingers the size of spears, her voice sore, maybe just thought, pure and burning wraps around you. They unmake what they do not understand. Seal the lattice, you. Want to scream what lattice? Give me a YouTube tutorial? But the void doesn't care about your sarcasm. The strands around you start snapping one by one, each break echoing like stone towers collapsing in distant storms. And here comes your historical fact. Mid-crisis, the Crusaders' sack of Constantinople in 1204 wasn't just a looting spree. It was a cultural cataclysm, a ripping open of East and West that scholars still debate today. Was it greed? Was it divine mandate? Or was it, well, let's not say a bee apocalypse, because historians frown on that in academic journals. Back? In reality, you gasp, clutching the sealed disc like it's the last Wi-Fi signal in the universe. Voices roar behind you, Latin, now mingling with Greek, steel rasping on steel. Candles topple, wax splattering like molten stars, and the reliquary. Its hum spikes into a keening wail, shards of sound that make your bones ache. You slap the disc against the reliquary lid without thinking. It clicks soft, almost tender-and for a second. Everything stops. The noise, the fighting, the smoke. Stillness holds the air like amber. Then the reliquary bursts, not open, but outward, dissolving into pure light. It pours across the floor, up the walls, through the mosaics, igniting every gold tesserae into a miniature sun. Shapes flicker in the globes, thousands of them, winging silently into the cracks of the dome, stitching light where stone had threatened to tear. And then, like a held breath released, the hum fades. The disc in your hand cools to simple metal, dull and lifeless. The reliquary is gone. So is the queen, but the Crusaders aren't. The doors splinter in a rain of wood and iron. Men and males surge through. Faces hard, eyes catching the last trails of glow, like wolves seeing fire for the first time. They stop, just for a second, stunned, by the golden blaze dying around you. And in that pause, you know two things. One, whatever you just did worked maybe. The breach is closed. The sky will hold. The hive star won't collapse into oblivion, at least not today. 2. You're about to have the most awkward conversation of your life, assuming they don't kill you before you even manage a high love. What you've done with Jerusalem. Here's your quirky tidbit to chew on before the scene cuts. Byzantine beekeepers sometimes trained bees to recognize colors, even scents, painting their hives in wild hues to lure swarms. Historians still argue whether that's proto-science or just folks getting really artsy with insect real estate. Either way, compared to what you just saw, a sun made of bees, a queen who speaks in thought fire, that trick feels adorably quaint. Soldiers raise their swords. You raise your empty hands. And somewhere above, faint but sure, comes that last thread of hum, curling through the dome like a secret only you understand. The moment stretches like spun honey, thick and glistening. Swords hang midair, men frozen in their fury, mouths half open, as if the air itself forgot how to carry sound. You stand there, heartbeat ricocheting like a trapped sparrow, wondering if this is what divine grace feels like, or if you've just inhaled too much incense and are about to black out in front of the most judgmental audience in medieval Europe. One soldier steps forward, boots crunching over fallen splinters. His mail gleams red in the torchlight, and his eyes, when they meet yours, are colder than the marble under your knees. Behind him, banners ripple with strange emblems, lions, crosses, saints rendered with a flair that screams, "We brought a branding." Consultant to this crusade, you force your hands higher, palms out. Like that'll make you any less suspicious while standing in a basilica that just exploded into bees and starlight. Good luck explaining that without sounding like the world's sleepiest heretic. And here's your historical fact for the evening. When the Crusaders finally stormed Constantinople in 1204, it wasn't just pillage, it was spectacle. Horses trotted down mosaic floors, drunken knights draped themselves in silk robes, Relics vanish by the cartload, saintly skulls, holy splinters, you name it. One dude even looted a golden altar and turned it into a dining table, 'cause nothing says spiritual conquest like eating mutton off the Virgin's gift registry. Back in your nightmare-turn-history lesson. The leader's voice cracks the stillness. Harsh Latin rolls off his tongue like gravel poured on glass. You don't catch every word, but you know, who the hell are you? You hear one of it in medieval syntax. You stammer something that might pass for Greek, maybe a prayer, maybe a very panicked grocery list. The disc in your fist feels heavier now, its earlier glow gone, as if it's just metal again. You think about dropping it, pretending it was never yours. But something deep in your ribs whispers, don't, so you don't, instead. You slide it under your belt, hoping the hem of your tunic hides the bulge. Not your most elegant move, but hey, subtlety is relative when your audience thinks soap is witchcraft. The knight barks an order. Two soldiers peel off, scanning the altar, the walls sniffing for gold like human bloodhounds. One of them kicks a fallen candlestick and mutters something about relics. His tone says, if you pocketed even a finger bone, pal, we're making a necklace out of your teeth. And here's where the quirky tidbit drops like a honeycomb from heaven. Some Byzantine nobles were so obsessed with bees that they kept miniature hives indoorsius in their living quarters because they believed the low hum soothed the soul and attracted divine favor. Imagine a VIP suite in the Great Palace, all peacock mosaics and imported silks, and a corner buzzing like a chainsaw because someone thought, sure, bees belong next to the couch. Historians still argue whether this was eccentric devotion or just a really bad pest control policy. The tension spikes as another crash booms from the narthex. More crusaders flood in, dragging shadows like storm clouds. Outside, the city burns a dull roar you feel in your teeth, mixed with the screams of merchants who thought Venetian contracts were ironclad. The Fourth Crusade isn't a holy mission. Anymore, it's a yard sale where everything's free if you've got a sword, and you're standing at the center of it all, holding the last echo of something older than empire, older than faith. The queen's voice hasn't returned, but the hum faint. Far, tucked between heartbeats, still threads through the air, stitching calm where panic should live. Then a miracle happens. Or maybe just irony doing its thing. A bell tolls above, deep and thunderous. The soldiers flinch not at the sound, but at the sudden swarm that erupts from the shattered dome. Bees, thousands. They pour through the smoke in golden torrents, wings catching firelight, bodies shimmering like coins. The men scream, swords slash air. Mail clatters as helmets hit the floor. No one cares about relics anymore. They care about getting out alive and maybe finding a lake to drown themselves in honey-scented terror. And you just stand there. Bees swirl around you, their hums swelling into something symphonic. A sound that feels like an ending and a promise stitched together. For a breath, maybe two, you glimpse it again, the lattice, whole and blazing, threads pulled tight across. A cosmos too vast for your sleep-fogged brain to name. The breach is sealed, the order holds, then it fades, the swarm thins. Silence stretches in, soft as wool. The basilica smells of smoke, wax, and something sweet you can't place. Maybe clover. Maybe eternity. You walk out because what else is there? Past toppled candlesticks, past nights sprawled like broken toys, past frescoes glowing in the dying light. Outside, the city yawns in fire and ruin, but the stars above, they look steady, almost smug, like bees that just fixed a hole in heaven. And here's your open scholarly debate to chew on as the night closes. Were the Crusaders villains, victims of circumstance, or just greedy opportunists wrapped in silk and scripture? Historians still argue, their words buzzing like hives across centuries, but you've seen what none of them wrote down. You know the hum behind history, the one that threads through palaces, deserts, and dreams. You keep walking, clutching. Nothing now. The disc is gone, or maybe it never was. Maybe all you carry is a faint vibration in your bones and the knowledge that order, like honey, is sweet because it's fragile. And if anyone ever asks why the bees still linger in the domes, Of forgotten churches, why honey sometimes drips where no hive should be, well, let them wonder. You'll just smile and hum and keep their sleep safe tonight. The fire's roar fades behind you now. The night air settles, cool against your skin, brushing away the heat of chaos like a mother's hand on a fevered brow. You walk through empty streets where stones glimmer faintly, as if the city itself still glows from secrets stitched beneath its skin. No footsteps follow, no voices call. Only the whisper of bees, softer now, a thread of sound winding gently into silence. You pause under an archway where ivy drapes like velvet. Above, the sky stretches wide, scattered with stars that look older than time and kinder than empires. The hum inside you ebbs, like a tide pulling back to its quiet shore. Each breath comes slower, deeper. The weight in your chest loosens, melting, like wax left too close to a flame. Whatever storms raged within walls, or within you are, gone now. The lattice is whole. The queen is distant, but her promise lingers, order in the midst of ruin, sweetness carved from chaos. So let the world shrink to this moment. Let the dark cradle you like a hive cradles honey. Your eyelids grow heavy, heavier still, until they flutter closed. The hum softens again, no longer bees, just breath, just calm. Sleep comes easy now, like a door swinging open without a sound. Step through, rest there. The stars will keep their watch, and somewhere, in a place even dreams can't name, the bees will keep their song for you. Good night.